cloud native, SD-WAN, analytics, machine learning, agile development and testing, edge computing, DevOps, service management, enterprise architecture, hybrid IT, neural networks, cybersecurity, serverless, low-code, no-code, big data, integration, Intellics, where we bridge modern and legacy technology and untangle the buzzwords to help business and IT leaders connect the dots to achieve digital transformation. Disclaimer: the perspectives expressed in this show are the independent opinions of the hosts and/or guests and do not necessarily reflect the position of Intellics or any companies mentioned here. And now, your hosts, Charles Arajo.
One of the critical elements of realizing a self-service BI future is enabling business users to make sense of complex data throughout the data to insight pipeline. AI promises to be part of the answer, but how? So LSP, as I think about this question of the application of AI, artificial intelligence, and its various forms to help create this idea of a self-service BI future, what comes to mind is that it allows everyone to become a power user, right? So is that what's going to happen?
Well, first off, AI is not the panacea. There is a context, there's a practical application in which AI is being applied in the context of business intelligence. And the focus clearly is to make everybody a power user. Again, if you look at power user, there are context or layers to it the way I see it as a practitioner. One is a power user is someone who could be a line of business user who is now being empowered by data and insights to take a decision that is important for the business. So empowering them and making them power users so that they are data-driven. Now, there is another angle that connects back to some of the other things that we talked about in terms of modeling. So for example, we talked about how all these BI platforms today create out-of-the-box models for analysis. However, for a power user, they probably want to create additional layers or additional models for analysis. So that's where a platform has to lend itself and then make itself extendable. So yes, the goal is to make everybody data-driven. That's one aspect of empowering someone within the organization. And then to make people to be able to create additional layers of analysis. So that's the way I look at the different layers of power users. And also today, people are no longer afraid of data because the last 10 or 15 years of all these reporting and visualization and data analysis platforms have made business users to be more data-driven. They're not afraid of it. They don't really think of BI or analytics as something that they would have to approach with a whole lot of SQL or scripting skills and whatnot. And as a result, people are, again, the boundaries are being pushed so much that today, a line of business user is not even afraid of preparing the data for analysis, which by itself is complex. And even 3 years ago, this was not the way it was in the data preparation markets. Things are constantly changing as far as data consumption is concerned within an enterprise and how the world in general looks at BI today.
I'm thinking back to my days running IT, admittedly 20 years ago, and I'm not sure people were that afraid of data even back then. But I wish they were more afraid of it. They would sometimes do kind of these crazy things. But I think this sort of goes to the point you're trying to make, right? Is that for a long time, business users, non-IT people, have wanted and needed access to this data. But there's been this process. You alluded to it. You mentioned data prep. And so I really wanted to kind of understand this, right? You talk about this whole process that they have to go through and owning it. So what does that really mean? What is this whole process? Can you kind of break that down for us?
Definitely, Charlie. A great question, by the way, in terms of, and also bringing your experience anecdotally 20 years ago. People were scared of data. In the sense, people were scared of giving people access to data. It was all about, what can go wrong if it falls in the wrong hands. However, today, the systems and platforms are being built in such a way that there are guardrails in terms of how you make data accessible to different parts of the organization and different types of users within the organization. So that kind of governance within the tools, within the platforms, allow an organization to have or not sweat it out in terms of, are people going to do something wrong with the data? The guardrails are there. Now, in terms of data preparation itself, critically important. The reason I say that is garbage in, garbage out. We all know that, right? Starting our life in computer science, first thing that we talk about is bad input, bad output. So clearly, what happens when it comes to BI is 60 to 70% of the time as a BI practitioner, you are spending time on making the data clean, making the data understandable, making the data to tell you what it needs to the proper way. So there's a lot of preparation that goes on. So again, preparation also has elements of enrichment. For example, let's say you're working with data that's talking about the reviews that your product garners on a particular website. Now, if you take those reviews, those are basically texts. And unless you read each and every line of text, you do not know what a customer is feeling about the product, the sentiment associated with it. So now, as a part of data preparation, you can quickly point and click on the column that has the review and say, okay, do the sentiment analysis on this data point. And right out the bat, you create a new column that gives you the sentiment associated with the review. Now, if you take it for analysis, what happens is you can say, hey, what are the top 5 products that have the best review in my e-commerce store? So just like that, the ability to make data more conducive for analysis is also a part of preparation. There's cleaning, there is enrichment, there is transforms. For example, going back to the example that I was talking about, the products that you have on your e-commerce platform. What if you want to understand the impact of seasons on the sale of certain products? How about you bring data from weather.com and your CRM application, or in this case, maybe your ERP application, and connecting the dots. So creating those kind of models to help businesses understand the impact of, let's say, the seasons on product sale. And also, you can just kind of barely scratching the layer with simple examples here, but the ability to create those models for analysis. Again, I go back to models. I know I've been talking about this too many times, but it's critical. It's the foundation on which you do analysis.
So I have to admit, you're sort of, as an old IT guy, you're making the hair on the back of my neck stand up just a little bit, because there's this power. I get it. I get that a business user needs his data, wants his data, and is probably in the best position even to use this data. But there's also so much that sort of can be at risk with that. And so you said the key word earlier when we were talking about this, and you talked about guardrails. And so I'm just curious, as we move to this sort of idea of a self-service future, where are those guardrails coming from? And is that the role that AI is playing in all of this?
Definitely, the AI plays a role, but in general, there is also processes and governance around which these guardrails are set. So it's a combination of tools, AI, and also processes within an organization that helps you to set up the guardrails and make sure that the data is falling into the right hands.